Welcome everyone to take two of the live stream, being unapologetic and unleashing your power, your body, and your desire. If this is your first time meeting me, my name is Lauren Sarcione. I'm a personal trainer, a transformational coach, and energy healer. My signature program is called the Fat Life, which stands for Process, Heal, Align, and Transcend. And so that means that we are completely changing the relationship that we have with our body by changing the mind body, because it is our thoughts in our mind and our emotions in our body that are actually causing the laws of the universe to take place, to manifest. And I had this question in 2020 that I asked in meditation, which was, what went wrong in the natural order of cause and effect, and who was the first perpetrator? Because I knew hurt people hurt people, and that if we are told by all these really beautiful spiritual books that we can create our own reality, why is it that we are we're creating nightmares instead of our dreams? And so I've gotten to the bottom of it, and I have applied what I have learned to the aesthetic transformation, and applying what I learned to understand the laws of cause and effect, and how our body works to actually create our reality. Taking all of that along with my own inner work to heal the health problems that I had caused by repressed emotions, what I've discovered is that if you apply this information to your body goals, to your aesthetic goals specifically, it is like ripping the Band-Aid off into understanding and conducting energy. So it's really exciting because on the surface, it looks super superficial. But in order for you to actually show up boldly and say, I'm hot, I want to look hotter, and this is what I like, and this is what I don't like, and fuck off if you don't like it, and come give me a hug if you do like it. That takes a lot of courage and tenacity, because that is just not the way we have been conditioned. And so in today's live stream, I'm going to help you see how there is like an innate powerful wisdom within your body, an innate powerful presence that is yours uniquely, and then how the conditioning experience goes into effect for us to show up in the world and, fit into society. And, fitting into society, it really isn't that fun. Society does not want to have free thinkers, because if there are free thinkers in society, then there's no more control factor from the powers that be. Anyway, side note. So we have three things that we have been taught: that our body is something to control, fix, or shrink; that whatever our desire it is, whether it's food, pleasure, or success, it is dangerous; and that speaking up, being bold, and owning our power makes us too much. And so I know every woman that is watching this live stream can relate to these mindsets that we have. And one of the things that I love to remember about a mindset is that you can't see a picture while inside the frame, right? Like if you are a canvas and you have a frame, you cannot see the frame around you. And so our mindsets are similar to that. We actually don't know a lot of them that exist, because it's just how we operate. We don't recognize them until we are informed. But we can see them and experience them with what happens with our body, with our sabotage, or how we're ghosting our habits, or how our body might be exhibiting stress and breakdown from these repressed emotions. And then also like how our life is being experienced. So what I want to share with you is two things: that your body is the greatest source of wisdom, magnetism, and manifestation power. And you don't need to be smaller. You need to take up more space. So we're going to break down 4 reasons why this is so difficult for us to do. And then I'm going to give you 3 actionable steps that you can do today to start really unleashing yourself and becoming unapologetically bold in who you are and what you want. So first of all, it's not about willpower, it's about conditioning. So one of the things that I really love about my system is that I tie in spiritual concepts and universal law into the human experience, so that we can really start to remember who we are, that we are creators, and that we are endowed with creative ability because we are part of the whole. We are part of the ultimate and supreme reality, which is God. It's the most incredible thing to be a human. So when we're looking at that, it's not about willpower, it's about conditioning. And we're thinking around the lines that the body is something to control, fix, or shrink. that we're thinking that all desires are dangerous, food, pleasure, or success, and that speaking up, being bold, or owning our power makes us too much. So the reason why those things make it so that the reasons why we're ghosting or sabotaging our habits for our dream body, the reason why they become conditioning versus willpower is because these are the items that we would be self-expressed in at a very young age, or these would be items that we were self-expressed in at a very young age, that in order for us to go to school, to fit into the peer group, to be prepared for college or for the workplace, that we would know how to act, how to fit into whatever structure there is. And I can't help it. Oh my God, I can't help it. But I really don't want to make this like too big and abstract. But there is evidence that that long time ago, the matriarchal societies, that civilization, or like those societies, were built around the woman's menstrual cycle, the 4 phases, and that it was celebrated to have a menstruation, and that the women were actually the ones who were the leaders. The men actually played a secondary role, but not to say that there was like a power dynamic that we see with the patriarchy versus the matriarchy. Like the matriarchy was just more of a way that things were operating to be in a cyclical flow with the earth, because there is cycles of death and rebirth. Where when we got the patriarchal standards, it actually just became linear, and A plus B equals D and E. Right. So what we have is like this contrast of what is actually something that is natural, and then what is something that is imposed. And so we really get this screwed up by the time we're adult women, to where we can't listen to our body to know if it's actually hungry. We don't know if we like fatty food that's more dense, or if we like carby food that's more voluminous. We don't know if we prefer sweet over salty. We're like not able to sense any of these things about ourselves, because the system has gotten so convoluted where we're not connected to our body. So this conditioning aspect is long ingrained through generations and visible in our society. So when we're looking at this as a matter of conditioning versus willpower, what we need to learn is that the nervous system is the thing that is dictating this entire show for our personal experience. So what that means is that the body is something to control, fix, or shrink. So most of us in the Western world, we go to the doctor because we need to fix something, and the doctor prescribes, either therapy, physical therapy, mental therapy, or a pill for just one thing that we're going in for. So we're going to fix something about the body, instead of looking at a holistic view of like, are you happy? Do you have emotional support? Do you have a clean environment? Are you able to eat more food versus food like substances, which is mostly what we have in America? There isn't a holistic view of what is actually going on in the body as a way to let us know, are we in balance? And then thinking that food, pleasure, and success is dangerous. So these are aspects of the natural feminine embodiment. Women, our sex organ, gets to do 2 things. It can be used just for pleasure, for a clitoral orgasm, vaginal orgasm also, that happens. But the clitoris is purely, you hearing me, Facebook? It is purely for climax, for pleasure. And we can have a climax without producing a human. Where the male genitalia, when it climaxes, it always produces a human, of course, unless you got snipped. But there's always an ejaculation that leads to another human in men. But in women, it is just desire and pleasure. And so when we look back at when the shift came, when the shift was a matriarchal society to a patriarchal one, what we find out is that a lot of the amazing things about being a woman and our bodies became the things that we were shamed about. So we were unclean when we had our period, and men could rape us and use us as their tool for their orgasm. But if we had any source of pleasure in sex outside of procreation, we were little harlots, right? It's like, it's the whore dynamic or the holy mother dynamic. That's all we were left with. And so when we take into account that this is our history, this is our lineage as a woman, then the stuff that happens with our immediate body is so much easier to overcome because we're like, yeah, I can have a weekend. This is going to sound crazy to you, but I can have a weekend where I eat whatever I want. I obliterate my diet. I eat way too many calories. I eat way too much junk food. And on Monday, I'm going to start again because once a month, I need that release. That could be something that is your lifestyle that works for you. But because we've been so ingrained that anything to do with our body and pleasure and food and success is frowned upon because of the patriarchal system that took over after the Neolithic age that we are still suffering the remnants of, then we can really get some big perspective on the cravings when we have urges to binge so that we can actually take a step back and be like, why is this bad? Tell me again why eating chocolate is bad. Explain that to me. Thank you. Thank you. So the next one is speaking up, being bold, or owning your power makes you too much. So we're first just on the same on the first item, which is it's not about willpower, it's about your conditioning. And so one of the things about the matriarchal societies is that we were the builders, we were architects, we were scientists, we were professors, we were plumbers, like entire civilizations that were way more advanced than what we have now were built by women. And so when you take a look back at what maybe some unhappy men that were jealous that we could have orgasms without children and we could create things whatever we wanted and we could have a million boxes open in our head and they could only focus on one thing at a time. They said that we're crazy and they said that whatever it is that we have in our intuition is too much. And then the witch hunts happened and we were murdered for 300 years. So we really get to find out that if we have an opinion, if we are bold, that is taking up too much space, that's being too much, and that we should sit down and be quiet. And so now when we're translating this into the body, we're like, wait a minute, why can't I have a six pack? Why can't I whittle my waist? Why can't I grow my butt? Why can't I open up my shoulders and have a really broad, a broad open chest to make an hourglass figure? Tell me again, sir, why that's wrong. I feel so bad. I am not ragging on men. I love men. I would like to find a really good man to be in my life. However, this is just like how the system got set up. And so I'm referring to the patriarchy and sir, but I do love men. Okay, so the next one is your nervous system has been trained to believe you need control to feel safe. So this one is a really simple one because if we go back to our tools with attachment theory, we find out that in the ages of 0 to 3 especially, but also in the ages of 0 to 7, our little nervous system is looking for other nervous systems to connect with so that we can feel safe. So what ends up happening is that instead of us um, going within to find that safety within with our own emotional intelligence, with our own strong growth mindset, because the nervous system has been programmed to look outside itself for another nervous system to say you are safe, what ends up happening with our diet mentality is we keep looking for the next best diet. We keep looking for the next best personal training program. We keep looking for something outside of ourselves to create that safety. And that's how we get into this obsessive stuff with the tools, with macro tracking or with doing your fasted cardio and then going back in the gym for your workouts and then having to do rehab type stuff and then having to do Pilates and then like we have like this huge list of all these things that we're supposed to do. And the reason why is because on the nervous system level, your nervous system does not know how to be calmed down by your own thoughts and feelings. So instead of you doing the inner work to stay grounded and be like, yeah, I walked for 20 minutes. That was great. I lifted my weights 3 days this week. That was great. I got my 100 grams of protein in. I'm hydrated. I don't need to obsess. Like when we have that frame of reference, when we feel insecure about our body, or we feel like we need to do more to get to a result faster. If we have this little internal checklist that we're like, nope, you did everything that's required of you for the long-term effect of having your dream body. Now, do you want to go play? Do you want to go read a book? Do you want to watch some Gilmore Girls? Like, what would you want a bath? You want to go get a massage? What do you want to do? And so if we have that within ourselves, then we're not going to feel this external pressure that we have to keep producing and doing things. The next one is the cycle of self-sabotage comes from disconnecting from your body's energy, not a lack of discipline. And so the self-sabotage is a very interesting dynamic because there are so many ways that you can look at it. Oftentimes I refer to the cycle of abuse because we have like this period, like in the cycle of abuse, right? When you're in a relationship, there's a time where there's no conflict. And then all of a sudden, like there's something starts to build, there starts to be a disconnect. People's attachment wounds start to go off where one person starts to get avoidant, the other person gets anxious, and then all of a sudden the person who is the abuser unleashes wrath on the person who is usually the victim. And so then what happens is we have this horrible event, and then we have a little bit of a cooling off period. We have the groveling phase where the person says, I'm so sorry, I'll never do that again. Then you have a period where things seem to be pretty easy. And then there's an explosion again. So I really started to see the cycle of abuse as it showed up with the binge, that we're following a plan to a T. We're doing everything right. We're super meticulous. We start to get this urge, and then all of a sudden we start like just shoving food in our mouth, and we can like be sitting there in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, eating. And then all of these really horrible things that you would never say to your friend, you start to say to yourself, because this is the abuse portion of it. This is where you are where you're saying like, this is never going to work. You're never going to get through this. Look at you. You're so fat. You're eating all of this food again. You're never going to make anything of yourself. And you keep eating and eating and eating until you are so uncomfortably full that you have to stop or you throw up. And then there is this like, the time where you feel really bad, where now like the victim really starts to come out. So when you're eating, that's when you have the perpetrator in the cycle of abuse. And then after you're eating, that's when you feel super victimized and you feel not good enough. Then we climb out of that rut by giving us, a stricter diet. We give ourselves the stricter diet. We throw away all the binge food and we're like, I swear tomorrow's going to be different. I'm going to start all over. And then that's like kind of the time in the cycle of abuse in relationships where nothing is happening until it happens again. So I want to introduce to you another way to look at sabotage, because if we look at sabotage as the repercussions of a wound, then we can get objective again. And the whole point is for you to start to view the world and view your experience of your body within the world as just two pieces of a pie, that there is a thought and there is a feeling, there's a cause and there is an effect. So when you start to look at sabotage as the effect of a cause of a wound, if we are feeling wounded that we're too loud, we're too much, if we are feeling wounded that what we want with our body, with our food, or with success is unsafe, if we're feeling those things, those are the core wound. And so then what ends up happening is, to prevent ourselves from becoming too much, too bold, too unapologetic. If you become any of the things that core wound was, then you are going to face rejection and shame. And so that's why the sabotage comes up. The sabotage is coming up to actually prevent you from being those things that could get you othered. And this is such a big thing for women, and such a big thing for us with women, because we end up being so competitive because we're not in a balance with nature or within each other. We lost our community for the most part. So the next one is relearning how to trust yourself as the key to breaking free. So this is what happens. I keep going back to it because, okay, so I keep going back to the matriarchal society because Saturn is a masculine planet and Neptune is a feminine planet, and they are going to be really close together. It's called a conjunction at 0 degrees Aries on February 26, 2026. We have 379 days before this happens. And I have researched other times that this conjunction has happened and how civilization, how the patriarchy has actually just shifted forms in the way it rules the world. Where in the matriarchal societies, it was a collaborative experience. And so I'm going to keep referring to that because we have this major astrological event that is way more important than the Mayan calendar ending in 2012. It's way more important than Y2K in 2000. Like, this is like the real meat and potatoes of our experience. So I'm going to keep referring back to the matriarchy probably from now on. So in the matriarchy, what we actually show with history is that the child was strapped to the mom for the first year, and then as the child was growing bigger, then more women and other men, not necessarily a biological father, started to take up child rearing. And so the child rearing actually happened in community where there wasn't a power dynamic of mine and yours. It was children are of the spirit. They come through the mother. They are through the mother body, but they are all part of the society. So in the matriarchal societies, everyone was included. Everybody had an innate system of self-trust because of how these developmental ages and stages were being downloaded of how to be human. And so now that we don't have self-trust, and the reason we don't have self-trust is because we have these attachment traumas where our little nervous system in those ages of 0 to 7, 0 to 3 especially, where there's very limited language for these emotions that get stuck, which make them repressed, which make them duplicate nightmares instead of dreams. Because we have these attachment traumas and our nervous system has learned it has to look outside of itself for safety, we don't immediately go within to ask ourselves any question and check in with ourselves to say, like, what's off? Like, why do you have a headache? Why is your stomach upset? Why do you feel like shit today? Why are you so tired? Why are you being a bitch today? Like, we don't have that that automation to go into the self-trust. And that's the thing that we absolutely need if we're going to make any of these aesthetic changes. So let's wrap this up. I want to share with you 3 ways that you are going to be able to get into this today, okay? So the first thing is that you have to rewire your nervous system. You have to shift from control to connection with movement, breath work, and embodiment. So what that means is, like my dance teacher, Melissa, says, we have to get here and here connected. So if you are just listening to this while you drive, I'm moving my index fingers up and down between my heart and my forehead. Here and here has to get connected. We have to have a mental emotional connection if we are going to be able to like get our nervous system to like only rely on our thoughts and feelings versus the external thoughts and feelings. And so when we do that through breath work and embodiment and movement, if when you're just moving your body and actually just feeling like how nice it is to feel sultry and like a seductress and really experience what these motions feel like in your body, that can open you up. The breath work in the Fat Life, we do brain and heart coherency breathing, where it's just 3 minutes a day. You put your hand on your heart, you thank yourself first for arriving in this moment and doing your part. And then you slow your breath down for 5 seconds on an inhale, 5 seconds on an exhale, and then you imagine something that would make you feel love, joy, appreciation, kindness, and care. Because then what happens is the electromagnetic signal from your heart, the emotions, it elevates and it lets your brain waves go into a theta brain wave, which is the God zone. This is the creative time. This is also the time in like ages like 4 to 7 where we're in theta, where we're just in download only. When we're 3 and under, we have even slower brain waves that are even more absorbent. So what happens in the brain and heart coherency breathing is because your electromagnetic field is getting into a higher vibration, you're able to magnetize more of what you want. Your brain is able to think creatively, and then your nervous system is finding out, oh, I'm fine. Because a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale tells the heart organ, which is part of the nervous system, everything's fine. There's no danger. A faster heart rate means that we're under threat or there's something active going on that like we really can't really be creative. So that's a really incredible way that you can get into more of a self-trust. The second thing is to release shame and own your desires, unapologetically claiming what you want, whether it's food, pleasure, success, or visibility. So again, this goes into our wounding in the feminine body, in the entire gender of being feminine. Because if we look back at history through anthropology and we find out how we got disassociated from our bodies and how the natural rhythms of our body that were once revered now became unclean, when yet men were able to take pleasure in our bodies and they still do. And so when you actually claim what you want to look like, how you want to feel, how you want to have sex, who you want to have sex with, when you actually start to claim every single aspect of your physical experience, you are going face to face with eons, with a millennia of ingrained fears that we have as a woman to not step into that for fear of how we are going to be perceived in society. Because if we don't fit into society, we're not going to make it, right? And so when you start to release your shame and own your own desires, you get stronger because you have to do inner work and you have to educate yourself on what it is to have a female body and the roots of why we feel so terrible. And that's why with astrology, if we look at our Lilith placement is where we think outside of the box, where we could create our own society that is going to go against the patriarchy, which they're not going to like. And then also our Chiron wound, where it is our core wound, the thing that we're going to be dealing with long term, but is also the thing that makes us the most magnetic. And so when we look at these two placements within our natal chart, it really helps us unpack the shame and rejection. And that is going to be something that then when you go to eat your favorite foods, when you start to do intermittent sampling and exposure therapy, which is week 2 of your food curriculum in the Fat Life, you are able to eat these foods that you usually just set aside for the binge, and you eat them on a regular basis so that you are consciously releasing the shame, because the binge foods, even you're going to eat them no matter what, right? So you might as well learn how to eat them consciously and actually reflect on, like, why am I making this food bad? Why am I being a bad person for eating this or for enjoying it? And then that way you really start to put the energy work and the inner work into practice with the food, which is like one of the things that's so great about the Fat Life, because we're using eating and exercise as a place for us to focus the energy of the inner work. Because so many times when you're doing inner child work, you're learning meditation, you're learning how to do all of these things with your energy, but there's no actual place to put it. So it's way too abstract. So in the Fat Life, when we do certain things with food, it allows you to unpack this shame where you're feeling bad for what you want. Okay, the third and final thing is move with magnetic confidence. Stop making yourself smaller and start moving, speaking, and taking up space like the powerful woman you are. So there are most likely thoughts that go through your head of knowing how to do something in a more efficient way, but you do not speak up because you are afraid of how somebody will say you're wrong, or will say that you're bossy, will say that you're a bitch, will say that you're controlling, whatever. When I realized that the matriarchal societies were actually more advanced than ours, and that we were taking up the space that most men take up in the world, most white men, I I'm not going after men, and I'm especially not going after white men, but I just want to, like, really expand your mind that we are dealing with things on a cultural basis that end up showing up in our food. And I do want you to be hot. I do want you to enjoy being in your body. I want you to reach your aesthetic goals, but I want you to know that going to your aesthetic goals, and the reason why it hasn't happened yet is because you have all of this old baggage, and a lot of the old baggage is societal. And so I just am going to probably keep reiterating some stuff, but I want to make sure, like, I'm not hating on men. It's just how the system ended up working. So when you switch your focus from being smaller to taking up space, how this showed up for me is in a November of 2022 is when I was preparing that January I was going to start a cut where I could really focus on getting my 6-pack. And I was really afraid that I was going to show up as a skinny white woman in the spiritual space, because I had read an article online talking about the stereotype of white women, that the more spiritual we get, the skinnier we get, and how this is like an aspect of toxic spirituality. And I was like horrified, because I was like, that's not what I'm trying to do. But like in 2020, I lost 25 pounds because I stopped lifting weights because the gym was closed. And I started walking one dog at a time. And I have 3 dogs, and it's a 2-mile walk. And I ended up walking 6 miles a day. So I lost a ton of weight. And then when I'm reading this article and I'm getting more spiritual, I'm like, oh my God, I can't be this. So then when it was time for me to do a cut, I was like, I'm going to be that. People are going to judge me. They're not going to take me seriously. They're going to say that I'm just trying to get skinny, and this is not what I'm after. All I want is to see more muscle. That is my goal, to see more muscle underneath my skin. And so that was my mindset. And that was a different mindset than doing things to lose weight and be smaller. My mindset has been be as visible as possible, be as visible in my strength, be as visible in my muscular tone as possible, not be smaller. And so when we start to actually live this way, and we start to recognize that the diet mindsets that we have and why we are so strict with our food and then why we blow it, that is us trying to actually be smaller and not cause waves, to really fit in so that we can check the boxes, have that success, right? Like we used to say, you go to school, you go to college, you meet your husband, you da 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 da. That stuff like really isn't the example anymore, but there still is an example of fitting in, especially with social media, that like so many women want to be an influencer. And it's like, are you giving any value? Or like, are you just selling things? Like, did you maybe back in the day, you would have aspired to be on the Home Shopping Network? Like, what is it exactly that you're doing where you are trying to put yourself into a box to look a certain way to accomplish certain things? It's the same thing with the food. So when we're able to really take all of this stuff in and be practiced in our inner work, these layers just start to fall off and you're able to be more bold. And when you are more bold and in self-trust, then you become more magnetic. And then what happens is your algorithms, your Amazon algorithm even, is going to start to send you things that are resources that are going to be helpful for your goal. People are going to shift in your life to where you have more supportive and collaborative relationships. So many things in your life start to transform to support the new version of you. And the reason why that's happening is because your thoughts and your feelings, your energy is changing. So because your energy creates your reality, that starts to change. Your life starts to change as you're unpacking all the stuff around the diet mentality, and then the two ends of the spectrum come together. You build the holy grail of the lifestyle, the sustainable lifestyle, and you create your dream body simultaneously, almost right underneath your nose, because all you're focused on is unpacking this stuff and following through with eating and exercise, because you know that following through with what you say that you're going to do is a manifestation trigger for more things. So that's what's really exciting about the work I do in the Fat Life. And before we sign off, this is a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. We're already past 30 minutes. But before I sign off, I just want to tell you about 3 ways that you can join the Fat Life. Number 1 is the gamified option. It's $49 and you get access to all the modules, all of the coaching. You have a weekly Q&A thread that you can post a question and then I'll answer it on either the weekly group coaching call that is with the hot seat coaching of the community calls, or I will answer them on the actual thread. That is $49 a month. You can join the community container, which is still within that platform, so everybody sees everybody. And with the community, you get everything that's in the gamified coaching, but you also have weekly coaching calls with me. And in the gamified, it's when you participate in the platform, the leaderboard keeps track of you. So then you can win a monthly coaching call in the community container. The final way to join the Fat Life is one-on-one. And in the one-on-one, you get everything that I just mentioned. And you also get 2 private calls a month. And this is for someone who wants a lot of hands-on so that we can really move through things powerfully. So that is how you can join. Send me an emoji, send me a fire emoji in the DM on Instagram, on the PM on Facebook. And then if you are watching the replay on YouTube, hi YouTube, just click one of the links below for your sign up to join the Fat Life. Bye.